Welcome to Inside the Ropes. January is always a strange month. Quiet fairways, cold hands, long pours, and big thoughts. It's where reflection meets resolve. In this month's Golf Cask, the stories cut deep. I'm your host, Brian Bailey. Tonight we're bringing the best of January 2026. Stories of craft, resilience, patience, and community. Cigars that teach rhythm, whiskeys that reward curiosity, golf that reminds us who we are when the world gets loud. This is the Spark, Sip, Swing Adventure community. These are the stories that stay with us. So let's step inside and talk the shape of smoke, understanding vitolas. Our first story lives in the hand, not in the humidor. Cigars are often judged by brand or strength, but shape. Shape is where the ritual lives. Vitola isn't about size, it's about voice. It's how the leaf chose to speak. In this piece, we slow things down and learn how form changes flavor, burn, and also rhythm. Just like tempo changes in a golf swing. This is the shape of smoke, understanding vitolas. In the language of cigars, vitola means shape and size. But don't let the simplicity of that definition fool you. Vitola is one of the most misunderstood aspects of a cigar experience. Most beginners think it's how long the cigar lasts, but in truth, vitola changes everything. How it burns, how it tastes, how it feels in your hand. It's just not form, it's expression. Think of it like golf shafts and swing weights. Same club head, different feel, different flight. Cigars work the same way. The blend might be identical, but the vitola decides how the performance unfolds. The spark of form. Let's start with the lancero. Thin, refined, and elegant. This is the scalpel of cigars. A narrow ring gauge means more wrapper influence and less filler, so every puff sings with precision. The flavor is sharp, clean, and expressive. But like a 3-iron off a hard pan, it demands patience. The lancero is unforgiving if rushed, but in the right hands, it can deliver a masterclass in finesse. Then there's the robusto, the all-around performer. Shorter, thicker, perfectly balanced, the robusto offers flavor, draw, and consistency in about 45 minutes. It's a 7-iron of cigars, reliable, steady, always in the bag. The burn is predictable, the transitions are smooth, and satisfaction is almost guaranteed. The next step up is the toro, a slightly longer sibling of the robusto. The extra inch adds complexity and rhythm. Each third unfolds like a chapter in a story. Sweet at the start, spice in the middle, richness at the close. This is a formula you see often. The toro isn't about speed, it's about the journey. And then there comes the big shapes, the Gordo and the Churchill. These are twilight cigars, wide, slow burning, reflective. The larger ring gauge cools the smoke and softens the intensity, stretching the experience into a long, even rhythm. You don't rush these, you savor them. Light one after the round, pour something rich, let the days settle while the smoke drifts like memories. Let's dig in a little bit deeper at the geometry of flavor. Each vitola tells the same story, but in a different voice. The blend may be consistent, but proportion shifts. A smaller cigar means more wrapper to fill ratio, while a larger cigar leans on body and depth. A lancero spotlights the wrapper, offering brightness and intensity. A Churchill spreads the same flavors across time, mellowing the edges and expanding the mid-range. Neither is right or wrong. They're simply perspectives, like hearing a song played on an acoustic guitar or a full orchestra. Same melody, different mood. That's why size isn't just measurement, it's interpretation. It's time to have some fun. It's time for some experimentation. If you really want to understand the vitola, compare them. Take two of the same blend, let's say a Nicaraguan Habano, and smoke it back to back in two different shapes, a Robusto and a Toro. Notice how airflow changes the body, how burn rate changes sweetness, and how construction alters rhythm. You'll find that thinner cigars burn hotter and sharper, with bolder, more immediate notes. The thicker vitola cools the smoke, rounding the edges, and softens spice into cream. It's the same principle as golf fittings. Same club head, different shaft. Small adjustments in structure change everything about how it feels in motion. That's the joy in the craft, discovering through comparison. Time to form your expression. Finding the preferred vitola becomes more than preference. It becomes who you are. Some smokers love the control of a Corona, compact and classic. Others prefer the gravitas of a Churchill, slow and stately. Some chase short bursts of flavor. Others like long reflections. Your favorite shape will start to feel as an expression of yourself, your pace, your patience, your personality. The bold reach for the thick and heavy, the contemplative linger with the slender and slow. Neither is better, each is true. Let's finish this up. The vitola isn't just size and shape, it's personality. It defines how the cigar speaks to you, how long it lingers, and how deeply it connects. When you want to focus on intensity, go narrow. When you crave ease and leisure, go wide. But above all, experiment. Smoke the same blend in different forms. Pay attention to how each burn, how each tastes, how each feels. Because the magic of cigars, like golf, like whiskey, lies in the rhythm and discovery. Here's the final pour. The vitola is the voice of the leaf. Find the one that matches your rhythm, your mood, your movement, because when the shape fits, the smoke sings, and that's when the ritual becomes yours. Vitola is a choice. Not better or worse, it's just an expression. And thinking of expressions, have you joined Golf Cask yet? Before we move on, if you're enjoying these stories, there's a reason they don't live alone. Golf Cask is where golf, whiskey, cigars, travel, and people intersect through podcasts, magazines, tastings, trails, and community. Join us at golfcast.com because members get access to exclusive content, private tastings, long-form conversations, and stories that don't rush the pour. Golfcast.com. Pull up a chair. You're already halfway in. And like golf, once you understand why something feels different, you stop guessing and you start listening. Which brings us naturally to the barrel, because whiskey has a shape too. They're just made out of oak. Now it's time for whiskey barrel types and finishes, the art of the second cask. Every whiskey has two teachers, time and oak. The first barrel gives structure, the second barrel gives soul. In this story, we step into the finishing school for whiskey, where rum, sherry, port, and wine casks add accents, not disguises. If you've ever wondered why finished whiskey feels deeper, or when they've gone too far, this is your guide. With finished whiskeys, the first cask gives it structure, the core identity of vanilla, caramel, spice, and toast. But in the modern whiskey world, the second cask can give it soul. It's like a student finishing school for whiskey, where a spirit that's already mature goes back for a little extra polish, a little more worldliness. These are the finishing casks, where innovation meets tradition. If the first barrel raises the whiskey, the second one refines it, the foundation barrel. Before we explore finishes, let's talk about the foundation. Most whiskeys age in one or two barrel types: American white oak, sweet, warm, loaded with vanilla and coconut; European oak, spicy, nutty, darker, with tannins and depth. American oak dominates bourbon, because by law, bourbon must be aged in a new charred oak barrel. That fresh char creates caramelization sugars that infuse the whiskey with toffee, butterscotch, and warmth. Once the barrel is emptied, it doesn't retire. It travels to Scotland, Ireland, or Japan for a second life, aging single malts and blends. Those used casks bring a gentler influence, soft vanilla, honey, and light fruit. So the barrel's journey is like a world tour, born in Kentucky, seasoned in Scotland, and may be finished in Portugal or Spain. The rise of the second cask. Finishing begins as an experiment, not as an art form. In finishing, a whiskey that's already fully aged is transferred into a different cask for a few months or years. The second barrel once held another liquid: wine, rum, sherry, port, Madeira, even beer. This second aging stage adds complexity, contrast, and personality. Think of it like playing the same course under different weather conditions. Same fundamentals, completely different feel. Sherry casks, Spain's sweet gift. Sherry casks are the godfather of finished barrels. Made from European oak and seasoned in Spanish fortified wines, they bring notes of dried fruit, walnut, and cocoa. Distilleries like Macallan and Glendornich built their reputation on them. A good sherry finish adds elegance, sweetness balanced by spice, like autumn warmth in a glass. Different types of sherry casks yield unique personalities. Oloroso is nutty, dry, full-bodied. PX, sweet, syrupy, dessert-like. Fino, light, crisp, subtly fruity. Sherry casks don't just season whiskey, they seduce it. Port, Madeira, and wine finishes, color and character. Then came the revolution, wine finishes. Port casks from Portugal bring red fruit, plum, and dark chocolate. Madeira offers caramel, orange peel, and a tangy zest. Some distilleries use red wine barrels, Cabernet and Syrah, to add bold color and tannin bite. Others use white wine for delicate floral tones. These finishes act like the brushstrokes on a painting. Too much and they're overwhelmed. Just enough, they add vibrancy and depth. It's all about timing. 6 months can soften a whiskey. 18 can transform it. Rum and beer finishes, the rebels. Some distilleries go tropical. Rum cask finishes brings molasses, sweetness, spice, and hints of banana and pineapple. The Caribbean whispering to the highlands. Others experiment with beer barrels, especially stout or IPAs, for rich malt or citrus notes. These finishes bridge two worlds, the brewer's grain and the distiller's flame. They're playful, unpredictable, and very modern. Whiskey's way of coloring outside of the lines. Now let's focus in on the char of the barrel. Not all barrels are created equal. The way that they are treated before filling changes everything. A toasted barrel is heated gently, caramelizing the sugars without burning. A charred barrel, on the other hand, is briefly set on fire, creating a layer of active charcoal that filters impurities and adds smoke. Char levels go from 1 to 4, determining intensity. Bourbons typically are of a 3 or a 4 char, which gives it the deep amber color and toasted marshmallow sweetness. Fire is flavor. That's the moment oak becomes art. Finishing isn't about fixing whiskey, it's about storytelling. A distiller might use rum casks to add joy, a sherry cask to add depth, or a port cask to add romance. Each finish says something about their intention. The great distillers treat it like jazz. They know the melody, but they're not afraid to improvise. Too much time in the wrong cask, though, the whiskey loses itself. Great finishes walk the line between enhancement and disguise. In terms of golf, it's like adjusting your stance. It's a small change, but can have big differences. But it's still your golf swing. Let's take a quick look at a golf cask parallel. A finished whiskey is like the back nine of a great round. You already set the rhythm, now it's all about refinement. You're not trying to reinvent the swing, just sharpen it. A port finish or a rum finish is the late round adjustment that turns a good day into a memorable one. You can't fake confidence or character. You can only build on it, one barrel at a time. Tasting assignment, finishing school. Pour 2 different whiskeys, one standard expression and one finish. Try Glenmorangie Original, ex-bourbon cask, and Glenmorangie Quentin Reuben, the port finish. Smell and sip both. The first is clean, crisp, and classic. The second, richer, darker, fruit-forward. Same spirit, different story. That's the magic of the second cask. Now it's time for the final pour. The second cask isn't decoration, it's dialogue. Every finished barrel adds a new accent to the whiskey's voice, providing that true craft isn't about change, it's about conversation. The second cask doesn't overwrite the story, it answers it. And the idea to adjust, don't abandon, might be the most important lesson in golf, whiskey, and life. And thinking of adjustments, have you been to Poor Decisions, where you get to be the hero of the ranking stories? At Golf Cask, we don't do 5-star fluff. We make poor decisions. It's our ranking system for whiskey, courses, pubs, cigars, and experiences, designed to help you, the hero of the story, when someone asks, where should I play? What should I pour? Where should we go? Poor decisions, smart picks, better stories, only at golfcast.com. And thinking of lessons learned under pressure, let's head over to London in the 1940s. The Richmond Golf Club, playing through the end of the world. There are moments in history when the world loses its balance. Roofs disappear, sirens scream, sleep happens underground, and the future shrinks to whatever fits in your hands at that moment. In 1940, that moment for Britain arrived nightly, carried in on the drone of aircraft and whistling of falling bombs. London burned, the Blitz was relentless, 57 straight nights of bombing, followed by months of continued raids. Civilization felt fragile, surviving felt temporary. And 8 miles southwest of the city, at Richmond Golf Club, someone was checking the wind, not metaphorically, but literally. When the Luftwaffe turned neighborhoods into rubble, members of Richmond stood on the tee box in tweed jackets, debating club selection like the sky wasn't actively trying to kill them. It sounds absurd. Well, it is. And it was also one of the most quietly defiant acts of resilience the game of golf has ever seen. This wasn't denial. This was a ritual. Richmond Golf Club didn't stumble into the moment by accident. The club lived on sacred ground long before the war arrived. Sudbrook Park, with its grand Georgian house, built in the 1720s for the Duke of Argyll, had already survived centuries of social change by the time golf showed up in 1898. The mansion became the clubhouse, the estate became the course, fairways wound through the history, fireplaces warmed generations. By 1940, Richmond wasn't just a golf club, it was the guardian of continuality. So when bombs began falling on the property, destroying outbuildings, peppering fairways with shrapnel, and leaving delayed action bombs ticking beneath the turf, the club did something remarkable. They adapted. Not with speeches, not with slogans, with rules. Temporary rule-time golf rules were drawn up, not of satire, not of propaganda, but as a functional competition guidelines. Players were instructed to collect bomb fragments to protect the mowing equipment. Delayed action bombs were marked with red flags. Shrapnel was considered loose impediment. If your ball was destroyed by the enemy's actions, you were granted a free drop. And if a bomb exploded during your backswing, you could replay the shot with a one-stroke penalty. Even under fire, golf was still golf. Caddies walked fairways marking unexploded bombs with flags, like it was just another hazard to manage. Greenskeepers showed up because fairways still needed care. Members played not because it was safe, because it was familiar. Because, in a world that felt unrecognizable, the rhythm of a round reminded them who they were. This wasn't recklessness, it was resolve. When the newspaper caught wind of the rules, the story spread. The British public loved it. Here was proof of the spirit had not been broken. That life, somehow, still had shape and structure. In Germany, the reaction was less amused. Propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels mocked the rules publicly, calling them evidence of the British arrogance and decadence, which is a bold critique for a man overseeing a bombing campaign. But in trying to ridicule Richmond, the Nazis accidentally amplified the message. You can bomb buildings, but you can't bomb identity. You can terrorize cities, but you can't erase a ritual. And nothing terrified authoritarian regimes more than people who refused to surrender their humanity. At Richmond, golf wasn't a luxury, it was a life raft. Because rituals do something essential. They remind us that we belong to something bigger than the chaos around us. Faith does that, family dinners do that, a pint at the pub does that, a cigar at dusk does it as well. And for the members of the Richmond Golf Club in 1940, the tea time did that the best. When a bomb crater appeared in the middle of a fairway, they didn't call it a catastrophe. They called it ground under repair. That's just not a golf ruling. That's a philosophy. You acknowledge the damage, you respect the danger, you adjust your stance, and then you keep playing. That's why the Richmond Golf Club isn't remembered merely for a quirky wartime anecdote. It stands a lesson in resilience, community, and quiet courage. No heroics, no headlines chase, just people showing up for each other and protecting the rituals that made life feel whole when the world felt shattered. So today, we formally induct Richmond Golf Club, 1940, into the Golf Cask Hall of Legends. Not because they played great golf, but because they played when it mattered most. Here's to the club that kept swinging while the sky fell apart, to the caddies with the red flags, to the greenskeeper who never stopped tending ground that refused to surrender, to the fairway that endured fire and fear and still welcomed the next tee shot. Keep calm, carry on, and play through. So we learned you can bomb buildings and you can crater fairways, but you can't destroy identity. At Richmond, they called chaos ground under repair and kept swinging. The mindset carries us straight into the mountains of West Virginia and Distillery playing the long game. But before we dive into that, let's talk about Golf Cask Life magazine, March 2026. If you like these stories and want to see them in print, long form, beautifully told, and built to be revisited, then Golf Cask Life magazine is your magazine. More depth, more craft, more of the people, places, and passions shaping this lifestyle. Available exclusively for members at golfcast.com. And main contributors to Golf Cask Life magazine are the Syndicate, and we made a little trip up to West Virginia and visited Devil's Due, the Whiskey Thief, the Cherry Barrel, and the long game at Devil's Due. If you ever want to know whether a distillery really lives the life, don't ask about metals, don't ask about shelf space, heck, don't even ask about proof. Ask him why his cherries don't taste like cherries anymore. We were barely settled in at Devil's Due Distillery when Wiley McDade, owner, pointed towards the old-fashioned and explained, like this was totally normal, that the cherries inside had been soaking in wheated whiskey for 6 months. After that, they come out tasting like chewy little bourbon balls. And then, because craft distillers are both insane and brilliant, he pulls them out, strips off the char, drains them, but refuses to wash them because the bourbon is the point, packs them into jars, and then pours cherry syrup back on top, putting the cherry flavor back into the cherries. 400 pounds, hand-pitted, the back of his truck overflowing like a crime scene from a cherry orchard. That's when you realize this isn't a tour, this is a confession. Golf Cask Syndicate found itself in Kearneysville, West Virginia, about as far east in the Panhandle as you can get. 6 miles from Virginia, 9 from Maryland, sitting near the confluence of the Shenandoah and Potomac rivers. Harper's Ferry is right down the road, with millions of visitors each year, and the ground here is rich for centuries of silt and river soil, exactly the kind of place where grain has a fighting chance to become something worth sipping. Devil's Due opened in April of 2021 with a simple idea that turns out to be wildly complicated. Be hyper-local. Local grain, local farmers, mash, ferment, distill, age, everything in-house. If something crosses a state line, it's because geography forced it, not convenience. And that philosophy shows up loud and clear in their newest offering, the Whiskey Thief Experience. A thief in hand, 4 barrels in front of you, barrel proof, pulls straight from the source. No filters, no water, no marketing fog machines, just whiskey telling the truth at full volume. The proof ran from 110s to the mid-120s, but proof wasn't the headline. Texture was, mouthfeel, weight. The kind of whiskey that doesn't run off your tongue, it moves in and starts rearranging the furniture. For me, barrel number 2 stole the show. The twin malt bourbon, 70% corn, 15% malted rye, and 15% malted barley. The malted rye doesn't whisper, it shows up with coffee, leather, dark chocolate, and a thick, oily roll that makes you think. Now we're flirting with Scotch-style conversation inside a bourbon glass. It's bourbon, sure, but it's bourbon that reads a few extra books. The 4-grain brought balance and sweetness. The wheated bourbon delivered those bready, soft notes with serious viscosity. The high rye carried more familiar bourbon marketplace signals, but with a crafted edge that reminded you someone's making choices, not chasing consistency. And Wiley will tell you that straight. If you came here for consistency, you came to the wrong place. The liquor store is undefeated at sameness. Devil's Due is undefeated at story, and that story is what keeps their doors open. That story is also very much a family operation. Wiley's son Ethan works at the distillery in the day-to-day grind, and he was right there helping us secure our Whiskey Thief bottles, locked in the whole experience from barrel pull to finished take-home trophy. And his 14-year-old also works part-time on Thursday afternoons, learning grain handling, through the FFA and getting a real education in the part of whiskey that starts long before the still, the grain. Wiley told me he doesn't touch the alcohol yet, by law, fair and smart, but he understands the process, and that tells you everything you need to know about where this place is headed. Because this is a long game. Developmental whiskey, the kind where today's 4-year barrels are teaching you how to make the 6 years even better. And maybe the 15-year legendary, assuming you're still around to drink it. Wiley joked that if he ever released a 25-year-old whiskey, they might call it the dead man's whiskey, because there's a decent chance his kids are telling the story by then. He's joking, but not really. So it's your move, Golf Cask Nation. If you want to sip from the same barrels we tasted, reach out to Devil's Due Distillery and set up your own whiskey thief appointment. This is not a show up and hope. This is an experience. Book it. See the flyer below for details and get on their schedule. And if you want the full story, the full laugh-filled, history-soaked, barrel-proof sit-down, head over to golfcast.com and listen to the 40-minute discussion we had with Wiley. You'll hear about the cherries, the local grain mission, the founder barrels, the still expansion plan, and the kind of honesty you only get when you're talking to the guy who built the thing. Golf Cask Nation, make sure you tell Wiley we said hello. And as Devil's Due is growing, we're growing inside of Golf Cask as well. We just introduced the Golf Cask Library. One more note before the final story. The Golf Cask Library keeps growing. More education, more rituals, more deep dives into golf, whiskey, cigars, and culture. No algorithms, no noise, just knowledge worth keeping. It's all waiting inside of golfcast.com. And now the Syndicate did our first cigar whiskey pairing for you. Imagine this, 5 guys sitting outside in the freezing cold with one cigar and way too much proof in their whiskeys. This is the Golf Cask Whiskey Syndicate, where pairing theory meets real-world chaos and honesty wins every time. Trash talk, big opinions, and one pairing that surprised everybody. Let's dive in to the Syndicate selection. All right there, Golf Cask Nation. Let's talk about our new series, God Help Me. I brought the Whiskey Syndicate together. Eddie, Ben, Bo, Steven, not Steve, apparently that's a whole thing, and me, Brian Bailey, your fearless host, ringleader, and future defendant. The premise is simple. Every month, one Syndicate member brings a cigar. Then the rest of us bring whiskeys that we think will pair, either by similarity, match flavor notes, or by going 180 degrees opposite, and let them fight a little to see who wins. The real goal is to find a pairing that makes both the cigar and whiskey taste better. The actual goal? Trash talk until someone drops an ash, a swear word, or both. The cigar for this episode is the Monte Cristo Espada Signature Series. Ben was nice enough to bring, as he said, a big stick for a big guy. Which is the kind of sentence that instantly told me this show was going to be uneditable. He describes it as medium to medium full with notes like spice, pepper, sweet tobacco, cocoa, espresso, and a creamy texture. And according to the AI, it finishes with a strong espresso and deep sweetness. Which is hilarious because AI will also tell you that cardboard box tastes a lot like sun-warmed cedar and a little regret. As much as this pains me, I have to give credit where credit is due. The cigar showed up like it had a resume. The presentation is gorgeous. The box looks like it should have come with velvet rope and a security guard. The draw was consistently great. Construction, solid. Burn, even. The cigar didn't just perform, it actually showed off. The only complaint, the wrapper packaging is perforated in a way that makes you feel like you're opening it wrong even when you're doing it right. Like a child-proof aspirin bottle designed by a cigar sommelier. The method, puff, sip, circle back, and try not to die. We ran this like a proper pairing, small pours, repeated comparisons, which is adorable in theory until the whiskeys are all over 110 proof and the conversation turns into like, is this a family show? Would this air on PBS Saturday mornings? Immediate profanity, sorry. Edit that. That won't show up in editing. I'm chopping. So yes, science. So let's take a deeper look at the 5 whiskeys that were chosen and caused chaos. Whiskey number 1, Rabbit Hole, single barrel cask strength, 113 proof. Eddie went first, which was a smart tactical move because the first pour always has the cleanest palate. Like hitting first in golf before your buddy tells you 3 swing thoughts and ruins your nervous system. Rabbit Hole came in with spice and structure. Eddie called it the bourbon worth touring for. And he's not wrong. The group reaction was basically, damn, this is legit. Pairing results. The cigar spice and the whiskey spice bonded maybe a little too well. Some of us liked the way it locked in. Others felt that the back-end spice hung around a little too long and blurred the cigar's peppery character. Translation. It worked, but it wasn't the movie trailer voice. Pairing as of yet. Sorry about that. I have a voice for the written word. Number 2, Devil's Due High Rye Bourbon, barrel strength, 116. Then Ben drops a local grenade, Devil's Due, the high rye barrel strength bourbon we tasted the day before with Wiley and the crew. This pour had muscle, spice up front, sweetness underneath, and enough presence to remind us we're still alive. Pairing result. This one pulled out sweetness from the cigar more than the pepper. It didn't bulldoze the cigar, it reframed it. Several of us leaned into Devil's Due because it gave the cigar room to perform while still bringing heat and depth. Also, if you ever want to see grown men become instantly loyal, give them a great barrel strength bourbon and a friendly distiller. That's basically a fraternity handshake with ethanol. Whiskey number 3, Jack Daniel's Single Proof, Barrel Proof Rye, 129.2 proof. Steven, not Steve, rolls in with rye at 129.2 proof, which is less of a whiskey and more of an accelerant. I say it, Jack Daniel's Barrel Proof program is absurdly good for the money, but rye plus cigar can be tricky. Pairing result. The rye spice mellowed the cigar hard. Several of us felt it put the cigar in the passenger seat while the whiskey drove like it stole something. Others liked how it evolved after a few puffs, but overall the rye didn't pair, it interrupted. This is where the episode turned into a cooking show for idiots. Then came whiskey number 4 from Donegal, Ireland, a hard hitter, Silky Red, the Irish peated cask strength at 127 proof. I think I pulled out a ringer here. Silky Red, cask strength Irish from Donegal with a peated influence. And yes, peated Irish really exists. It poured like gasoline and smelled like a light wisp of a campfire. Pairing result, best of the day. Because it did the one thing you wanted. It didn't leave a lingering spice that crushes the cigar flavor. The malt, the smoke, and the structure let the cigar, leather, coffee, cocoa, and creamy notes show up more clearly. This was the moment the room got quiet, which is rare for the Syndicate. When something is either genuinely good or someone just realized they can't feel their tongue. 4 out of 5 guys basically said, yeah, that's the one. And everyone immediately accused me of rigging it. Because, yeah, I brought it. Which is fair. I'm the founder. I'm basically the benevolent dictator with tasting glasses. Then came Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, 126 proof, batch B525. Finally, Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, because it's never a bad idea to invite a legend to the party. Pairing results, great whiskey. But as a pairing, a little muted, especially that late in the lineup. Some thought it didn't enhance the cigar, it just existed next to it. Like a polite neighbor who waves but never comes to the cookout. Bo's theory? And it was maybe a good one. Maybe Elijah Craig wasn't bad. Maybe it was just that the 5th heavyweight fight of the day and our palates were already bruised. So who won the day? Here's the uncomfortable truth. The cigar was the star. The Monte Cristo Espada Signature Series was consistent, flavorful, and built like it had something to prove. And the biggest laugh of the episode might have been the most accurate line of the day. I think the cigar is the winner, and I'm not sure that any of these were the ideal pairing. That said, if we were picking a Syndicate selection winner for this episode, Silky Red took it, because it let the cigar talk instead of shouting over it. And yes, the winner will surprise you, unless you've ever watched me bring a bottle to anything in my life. Then you saw this coming like a top drive. One cigar, 5 whiskeys, too many opinions, and just enough truth to do it all over again next month. Until then, keep the ash long and the pour honest. And we'll see you at Golf Cask. January gave us shape, patience, resilience, craft, and camaraderie. From vitolas that teach rhythm, to barrels that refine identity, to golfers who play through falling bombs, to distillers building something their kids might finish, to a syndicate willing to argue honestly over a long ash. These stories remind us why rituals matter, especially when the world feels unsteady. So let's have a toast to January. To the smoke that slows us down, to the barrels that teach us patience, to the fairways that remind us who we are, and to the people who make it all worth sharing. Make sure you keep calm, carry on, and play through. And if you like this episode, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page, follow us across the socials, and of course, join us for the full experience at golfcast.com. Because the stories don't stop when the pour runs out. Spark, sip, swing at Golf Cask.